push into your big toes and let that push into the big toes lift you into your low bridge. Pausing here, 2 pelvic points are drawing in. We're long through the low back. Now push into those big toes, lift the heels any amount. It might just be a little hover. Now lower the heels, try to lift and spread just the toes, but not the ball of the foot. And then lower the toes. Lift the heels, lower the heels, lift the toes, lower the toes. So we're going to keep alternating. The goal is to hold that pelvis really still. So you really have to use the glutes and the hamstrings to stabilize the pelvis. And if lifting and spreading the toes is not happening, just visualize it. Picture lifting and spreading the toes like they're fingers. Lower the heels and keep the toes down. We're going to stay in our bridge and stretch out the left wrist. Pulling back on those left fingers into some wrist extension. Switch hands, stretch out that right wrist. Maintain that full contact of the feet. Big toe, pinky toe, and heel. Active in the glutes. Hands come down. Let's take one more breath in. On an exhale, we're going to lower down one vertebra at a time, nice and slow, controlling that descent. And once you feel your sacrum right above the tailbone touch down, we'll bring the hands behind the head, elbows up toward the ceiling or in toward the forehead. Take a huge breath in, expanding into the ribs. Exhale, knit the ribs in. Lift off the shoulder blades without pulling on the neck. So let the head feel a little bit heavier. Inhale to lower down. Exhale, lift up. Feel the ribs pull in toward the body. Pelvis stays the same. We pick up the right foot, knee over the hip. This is hip flexion. Make sure you didn't lift the low back away from the ground. Right foot comes back down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up. Feel those ribs knit in. Lift up without yanking on the neck. Pick up the left foot, hip flexion. Keep the sacrum on the ground. Lower the left foot. Inhale and lower. We're going to add on a little bit each time. Exhale, lift up. Feel those front ribs pull in toward the body. Feel your 2 pelvic points draw in. Right hip flexes, knee over the hip. Now let's add on. Let's extend the leg, little knee extension. Rebend the knee, that's knee flexion as we step it down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up. Feel the ribs pull in. Back of the neck stays long. Pick up the left foot. Hold that pelvis still. Let's extend. The knee straightens any amount. We rebend as we step it down. Inhale and lower. One more add-on. Exhale, lift up. Feel the ribs pull in toward the body. Back of the neck stays long. Pick up the right foot. Hip is flexed. Now we extend the leg as straight as it feels comfortable. Knee extension. Abduct the hip. Right leg moves slightly to the right without the sacrum changing. Bring it back. Rebend the knee. That's knee flexion. And then inhale, lower down. One more. Exhale, lift up. Feel the ribs pull in. Pelvic points draw in. Pick up the left foot. Hold that sacrum steady. Extend the knee. Abduct the hip. The leg moves slightly to the left. Bring it back. Rebend the knee as we step the foot down. Inhale and lower. Let's release the hands. We'll pick up the right foot. Circle the ankle a couple times, both directions. And we'll cross it over for figure 4. This is hip external rotation. Check that we didn't just swivel the hips or the pelvis to the side, so both sides of the waist are equally long. You can stay here. If it feels good, you can pick up the left foot without grabbing and pulling. Now, if you'd like a little bit of extra mobility here, let's take that left heel. And as we swivel it side to side, what's happening is we're internally and externally rotating that left thigh bone or that left hip as we stretch the outer right hip. So that's just a little optional add-on if that feels good. Holding that triple S, so not letting the ribs pop up. Bring it back down. Release the right foot. Pick up the left foot. Just a couple circles here, both directions. Cross it over for that figure 4. This is external rotation of the left hip, long through the side of the waist. We didn't just swivel to the side. Any option, you can stay exactly where we are. You can pick up the right foot, you can stay there, or you can roll that right thigh bone in. That's internal rotation. The heel swivels over to the right, and then roll the thigh bone out. External rotation when the heel goes over toward the left. Keep the low back out of it. Let's release it down. Hug both knees in. We'll take a little rock side to side or up and down. Anything that feels good on the lower back. And when you're ready, we're going to come all the way into quadrupeds. We'll come to hands and knees. Grab a block if you've got one nearby. We're going to use it on our sacrum so that we can have a little bit more of that pelvic stability so that we can focus on freeing the lower body. So knees in nice and tight. Shoulders right over the wrist. Picture a broom taped behind your back. Can you lift your front body up without rounding? Right toes slide back. Before we lift the right toes off the ground, I want you to think about your left thigh bone trying to lift up into that left side of the pelvis or the left hip. So we're really engaged around the outer left hip. That way, when we float our right toes up right now, we don't sink that left hip out to the left. It stays super solid in position. Now, right knee bends, just like we did in that figure 4 potentially. Let's externally and internally rotate the right hip. So this is a super tiny movement. It's just that roll out and in of the thigh bone again. It's just going to maybe look a little bit bigger here in quadruped, but it's the same movement coming from the very top of that right thigh bone, holding the low back still, trying to balance that block. Let's release it down, recheck your triple S, make any adjustments. If the block was wiggling a little bit, you can always adjust it a little bit, make it more stable. Lift the front body up. Left toes slide back. Now before we float left toes, let's think about right outer hip, really holding that right thigh bone up as we float the toes. Knee bends. Let's externally and internally rotate this left hip. So we're trying very hard to be still pretty much everywhere else so that we can really feel this left hip move without the low back moving, without the chest and the shoulders moving, without the head moving, and even without that right thigh moving. So we're trying to keep that right thigh and the right hip very still. Let's release it down, remove the block. We'll take a quick child's pose or puppy pose to sit back onto the hips or just give the wrists a break. So puppy pose can be on forearms or even just higher on the hips. Child's pose is a lot of hip flexion all the way back. So whatever feels nice. You can do a little shimmy. All right, we're coming back onto the hands for quadruped, but if you would like to be on fist, you are welcome to do that. We'll inhale and extend the spine. We lift the chest forward. You can look up slightly, but you don't have to force the movement in the neck. Now exhale and round the back. Press the ground away. Let the head get a little heavy if that feels okay on the cervical spine. And we'll just move back and forth in between these two positions of really arching the back, spinal extension, and rounding the back, spinal flexion. From your cat-cow, knees will slide in even more. We're going to be in a super shortened triangle when we lift up to down dog. So knees way in toward the hands. Tuck the toes under. That's a little toe extension. Push into those big toes as you lift the hip creases up, 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 up. So we're trying to lift our thigh bones up toward the ceiling without that arching the back or dropping the belly down. So really lift the legs up. Lift the armpits up, lift the ribs up. So everything is lifting up toward the pelvis in this very short triangle so that we can pedal the feet out a little bit. Stretching into the calves, the ankles. So our goal here is to stay really strong with the frame of the arms. We're not letting the chest sink down through the arms. Pressing into the fingers, we're keeping the core pretty integrated so that we can really start to mobilize through the feet. Stretch that plantar fascia at the bottom, get some of this nice toe extension. Now, huge bend in your knees. Keep the feeling of your thigh bones trying to lift up as you walk your hands back towards your feet. Lower the heels down as soon as that's available, but keep the thigh bones lifting up. So we're walking back into this triple flexion or happy squat where we're flexed at the ankles, the knees, and the hips. Our knees are very bent. We're totally folded in half with a nice long spine. Hands can be as high as needed. Now push the ground away with the feet. We're pushing to stand. We're going to walk it forward and back a bunch of times. When we walk it forward, we can have the knees soft. We'll lift the heels. This is plantar flexion of the ankles, like a little tiptoe walk. So we walk forward, and then when we come forward, we're going to do dorsiflexion. So we do toe, ball, heel. Get that heel down, toe, ball, heel. Try to keep that heel down. Your steps might be a lot smaller. That's totally fine. Whatever it looks like, we're really trying to stretch that heel down. We do the same thing forward, and we'll go a couple times forward and back. Really get those heels to stretch down. All right, bringing it forward. Okay, let's come to the front of the mat. Knee circles, hands to the knees. Stay here or stay upright. Let's circle the knees. So wherever you are, plant the feet down. Keep the big toes down, the pinky toes, the heels. Now find that neutral position. Thigh bones are just going straight forward. Continue to hinge all the way forward into that triple flexion. Long through the spine. We're coming to quadruped, hands and knees. Triple S here, like a broom is taped behind you. Tuck the toes. Hover the knees without rounding the back. So long through the spine. Use that deep core. Draw the pelvic points in. Getting this toe extension. Lower the knees back down. We're going to step our right foot forward, 90-90 lunge or half kneel. You can untuck those left toes. We'll lift up. Feel your 90-90 here. Ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the ribs, ribs over the pelvis. You could have hands here holding the pelvis still, maybe hands at the thigh, whatever you want. We're going to lift our right heel. Lower down. So it might be a tiny little hover and lower. It does not need to be big. What I want you to do is really push into that right big toe and push into the ball of that right foot. We're trying to stay lifted in that left knee, like we're trying to suction our left knee up into the left side of the pelvis or up into that left hip socket. Let's pause here with the heel down. Left arm will reach up. Get the left pinky to reach up, 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 up. And we'll side bend over toward the right. Just a small little arc up and over. Little squeeze in that left glute. So we're really stretching the front of that left hip. Lift up. Hands come down. Quadruped, hands and knees. We're going to move our right knee with some hip circles. But we want to stay really active in this left hip. So make sure that left thigh bone's not wiggling around as we hover this right knee off the ground. Let's draw some circles here. If you want to have your block or something balancing on the back of the pelvis, you are welcome to do that here. Our goal, just like our hip rotation, is to not get this movement from anywhere else, but to learn where to stabilize so that we can really just focus on the mobility in this right hip. Take your right foot and step it out to the right now. Inner thigh stretch or adductor stretch. Try to get those right toes to face the front of the mat. And if it feels good, we can rock back here. You can just stay and hold and breathe. Whatever feels good, we just want to make sure we're not tensing or clenching while we're here. So however you need to relax, if that's breathing in a different way. But we want to make sure that we're not tensing the jaw or tensing anywhere around the pelvis. Bring it back in. Let's do just a little cat-cow here before we switch sides. Rounding and then arching the back. Left foot steps forward now into that 90-90 or half kneel position. Lift up, and we want to imagine that broom taped behind us, touching the back of our skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum. Right glute's got that little firmness to it. Wherever we want to have the hands as we lift and lower that left heel. So again, it could be a tiny heel lift. Everybody's going to have a different amount of this plantar flexion. Keep this feeling of trying to lift the right thigh bone, like you're trying to lift your right knee off the ground. Let's keep that left heel down so that whole left foot is really planted. Right fingers reach up, lift the pinky up, 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 up. Side bend over, but keep this stretch here. So a little bit of a nudge with that right glute forward. Let's lift it back up. Hands come down, quadruped. You could always be on fist as well. Feel that neutral spine. We're going to hover the left knee and make some circles with the left hip. If you want to balance something here, it's a great tool so that you can really learn when you're moving your pelvis versus just moving your hip. And we really want to try to hold this right leg still, right hip still. We'll step left foot out to the left for that inner thigh stretch. You can move the block if you have it there. And let's maybe start to sit the hips back if that feels good. Your right toes might be tucked or untucked. It's really dependent on whatever this right knee feels like, so that bottom knee. So each side might be a little bit different. Just customize it to face depending on what feels good in the knee, the hip, the inner thigh. All right, let's bring it back in. Any option here, you can stick with that cat-cow. You can take some kind of child's pose or puppy pose. You can come to a down dog. Whatever you want to do, let's focus back on our breath. So wherever we are, can we inhale and feel the breath expand all the way around the rib cage? Can you exhale fully? As we walk it forward, think about long in the spine, big bend in your knees so that we can get the feet all the way planted down in that triple flexion. Push the big toes as you rise up. Hands to the knees or stay more upright for our knee circles. So I'll face this way, just a little circle of the knee, but keep those feet planted down. Find that neutral position. Thigh bones are just going straight forward. Hands slide down as far as you can, really learning that triple flexion of hinging at the hips. Quadruped, hands and knees. Tuck the toes, toe extension. Hover the knees without rounding the back or spreading the shoulder blades apart and protracting them. Lower the knees. Right foot will step forward. Left knee can slide in a touch, but we'll keep the left toes tucked under this time. I'm going to use a block under my left knee. It's just an option. You do not have to do that, but that's really nice for lots of reasons, especially if you have sensitive knees. Can help just give a little bit more space to the hip, but I'll show you another reason why it's really helpful. So feel that your pubic bone is trying to zipper up to be in line with the belly so that we're not tipping the pelvis forward. So tailbone's reaching down, pubic bone lifts up. Now, as we work this right foot, I just want to focus on the back knee for a second, especially if you feel heavy in the back knee. Push into this kind of ball, the top of the ball of the foot area. So kind of right below the toes, you're going to push down there like you're trying to stand up. We're not going to, but pushing down there is going to take more weight off that back knee. Another way you can think about it with the block is trying to lift your left thigh bone off the block. It's obviously not going to lift, but that's that suctioning up feeling we want of the thigh bone in that hip socket. So with all that activity, hands to the right thigh, now we're going to roll onto our pinky toe side of that right foot. Roll onto the big toe side of the foot. Roll onto the outer edge, the pinky toe side. The inner edge, big toe side, and you're just going to keep rocking to the outer edge, inner edge. Now the knee is going to move a little bit, but we're not leading with the knee, we're leading with the ankle. So it shouldn't be a huge movement in the knee, but it will move. All right, left hand down, modified side plank. We're going to slide our left knee in pretty close to that left hand. If you would like to swivel that left foot out to the side of the mat like a kickstand, you can as we step this right foot back. Whatever feels best on this bottom hip. Shoulder right over the wrist. Now picture that broom behind you here. It might feel a little bit like leaning back for some of us if we're really in this rounded position. So picture that broom behind you. Feel the ribs pull in, feel the belly pull back. Left hand is going to come, or sorry, right hand is going to come to that outer right hip as we maybe float that right foot. Now we have so many options here. You can hold and do no other add-on. You could also keep the foot down. You can point and flex this right foot. Getting that ankle dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. You can circle the ankle both ways. You could try a straight leg hip circle. This is so tiny because we don't want to get the movement anywhere else. Just like we practice in quadruped, we want to isolate just that right hip if that's what we're doing. Let's bring it down to quadruped, hands and knees. Belly roll or torso circle. So it's like a cat-cow, but kind of circular. Nice way to get a lot of spinal mobility. Left foot will step forward into our 90-90 or half kneel. Right toes are going to tuck under as long as that feels okay. And then I'm going to put that block under the right knee. You could use anything. It does not have to be a block. Anything stable. Feel your pubic bone kind of lift up so it's in line with the belly button, not tipping forward. So if you're feeling really short or cranky in the low back, it might feel a touch like tucking under. And let's imagine that our right knee could lift off the block, getting as light as possible by engaging around that right hip and right glute. Hands to the left side. Let's roll to the left pinky toe. Left big toe. So we're just rolling to the outer and inner edge of the foot. This is coming from the ankle. Again, the knee is going to move, but the knee is not what's starting or initiating the movement. It's coming from the foot and the ankle. And we're really trying to hold this right glute active to keep this right thigh from wiggling around. Modified side plank, right hand, right knee down. You can move the block. Right knee slides in as close as it feels comfortable. Left foot back. Now feel shoulder over the wrist. Check in with the sacrum, back of the pelvis. If it feels like you're really sticking your butt or your tailbone out, lengthen the low back, zipper the pubic bone up like you're putting on a pair of jeans. Maybe left hand to the outer hip. If you would like to float the left foot up, we have all those options. You can point and flex. You can circle the ankle. You can try a very tiny straight leg hip circle. Whatever add-on you're doing, it is all serving our neutral spine, our neutral pelvis, that integrated core, so not wiggling around. It's very small, very intentional movement. Bring it back down, quadruped, end up wherever you want. You could cat-cow, you could take child's pose, you could down dog. Let's walk it forward, bent knee, forward folds. Press the ground away, rise up. We're coming into our standing sequence of movements. Our right foot will step back into a high lunge. Feel that same triple S here. Picture that broom behind you as we hinge forward. Any amount, keep the belly and the ribs lifting in. Now you could stay here. You could have hands come to this left thigh. We're going to push off the right toes and then rock back. So we're pushing into that toe extension and then rocking back toward that ankle dorsiflexion. But we're keeping the legs lifting up toward the pelvis. So we shouldn't be feeling heavy in the knees, hopefully. The core is working, the legs are really working. Really try to get that stretch back of the heel. Good, let's soften the knee, lift up, turn to the side of the mat. We're in our externally rotated squat. Hands come to the front and back of the pelvis. Lift the left heel. We roll that thigh bone in, so a little internal rotation, but the pelvis doesn't turn. And then we bring it back to our squat, lift the right heel, internally rotate any amount, bring it back. So we're just gonna alternate. This might be so small, you could go even slower, but watch how my pelvis and my lower body are not turning. It's just the top of the thigh bone. So it's just a little bit of rotation. Turn to the back of the mat. We're in a high lunge facing the back of the mat. So right foot forward, left foot back, zipper that pubic bone up. Tap the left toes forward. Now pick up that left foot any amount. We'll externally rotate the hip. Bring it back to neutral, tap down. Back to your high lunge, softly land. Tap forward. Pick it up. We externally rotate the hip. Bring it back, tap it down. Back to your lunge one more time. Bring it forward. Pick it up. Maybe we have fingers in the hip crease. Feel that rotation. Now stay in your rotation, that external position of the hip. You can stay. You can cross it over. Maybe we take a standing figure 4 balance. Hold that neutral pelvis. Let's unwind or uncross. Step that left foot back. Turn back to the side of the mat. Plant the feet down. Slow side lunges. Let's do fingers in those hip creases. So finding right where the thigh bone meets the pelvis and keeping that space so we're not pinching our fingers here. That would be the pelvis kind of tipping forward. Long through the spine, and then keep that push into the big toe. That's going to help you rise up. Turn to the front of the mat, and we'll do that on the other side. Left foot steps back. We're in our high lunge. Zipper that pubic bone up in line with the belly. Let's feel our triple S, our imaginary broom behind us as we hinge. Keep lifting that front body. Maybe hands come to the right thigh for a little more support as we rock and try to push off those left toes. Push into that big toe as you rock forward, and then really try to get that heel down. But keep the low back from arching. As the pelvis tipping, you're going to feel it in the knee, in that left knee. If the pelvis is tipping, it's going to feel like you can't really move anywhere because the knee's already locked out. So if you feel that, really think of zippering pubic bone up. It might a little bit feel like a posterior tuck under, but we're just trying to find neutral. Let's soften the left knee as we lift up. Turn to the side of the mat. Externally rotate the hips to your comfortable amount. Holding that feeling of the broom behind your back. We'll rotate internally one hip at a time. So the pelvis doesn't change. My upper body's not rotating at all. We're just lifting the heel and then rolling the thigh in toward the body and then out and away from the body. Internal and external rotation. Turn to the back of the mat. High lunge. Left foot forward, right foot is back. We're tapping our right foot forward. Single leg balance. Pick up that right foot. From the hip crease, we externally rotate. Bring it back. Tap it down. Back to your high lunge. Land softly. Tap forward. Pick it up. Externally rotate. Any pace. You can go even slower. Hold that pelvis really still. Work the glutes so that we're not feeling this in the knee. Let's pause in our external rotation. You can stay here. You can cross it over on the ground. You can take it into that standing figure 4 balance with that feeling of the broom taped behind the back. Unwind. Right foot steps back. We turn back to the right side of the mat. Side lunges. Fingers in those hip creases. Long through the spine. Keep pushing into the big toes, but maintain contact with the full feet. Let's turn it back to the front. Cat, cow. Anything that feels good here. You could take one more down dog. You could take a child's pose instead. If you want to just kind of smack the tops of the feet down, a little release there. They're getting a little crampy from working. And we'll end either in a seated position or all the way on your back if that's more comfortable. And we'll just end with the eyes closed, taking a few breaths together. Feeling that length in the spine, that triple S, if you're sitting or if you're lying down. As you inhale, really try to keep the face soft, the jaw relaxed. Feel the breath expand down into the ribs. Work on a full exhale, either nose or mouth, whatever feels like it relieves the most stress. A few more like that. And as you're breathing, just take a moment to thank yourself for this time today, for a little mobility and maintenance for the body. Sending one grateful thought out into the universe.